I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Well, hello movie fans, how are you? Today, Anatomy of a Movie, we are going to talk about the epic slice-of-life movie directed and written by Richard Linklater, Boyhood. Can't wait to get into this, but before we do, welcome to our great esteemed panel.
Hey guys, I'm Chloe West.
Hello, I'm Roxy Striar, happy to be here.
And this is Sara Stretton.
And again, Demetri Panos, and we have Phil doing the ones and zeros.
Yeah.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
As Marissa likes to say, who's not with us today.
I know.
So, hi, Marissa. We're thinking of
We
you.
miss you.
So, Boyhood, this movie, 12 years in the making, 39 days to shoot, and gaining tons of press. So why don't we just start? Chloe, why don't we start with our overall reaction, thoughts about the movie?
I thought it was great, incredible, and a little weird. It was bizarre to actually see people grow up on film and really it be the same person every time the time changed, and it was so cool. But it was a little weird. But overall, fabulous.
I really appreciated it, and I enjoyed many parts of it. There were some things that I thought, specifically the length, it was a little long for me. I was a little tired of it, but as individual shorts, I thought it was great.
Yeah, because we are talking about a movie that is it's close to 3 hours.
Yeah.
It's like 2 hours.
Throw in those trailers and it's 3 hours.
Yeah, it's 3 hours. So only one other movie this past summer can rival that time, and that was Transformers. So
Yeah, and, they're typically not this genre for that length. You're normally not going to see your family dynamic exposed for 3 hours.
Yeah, it was an undertaking, and I sort of kind of knew. I'll be honest. When I heard that, I was a little bit intimidated. When I heard, oh my god, this movie's I'm gonna be here for 3 hours. Yeah, I said, wow, this. I hope this keeps my attention. So, how about you? What do you think?
My overall thoughts. I think that appreciated is what Roxy used, and I have to really jump on board with that. Where I think that what this movie did and how it was made is so interesting and fascinating, and that captures you so much to hear how much time and effort and how much love is brought into this project. Also, as Chloe mentioned, you develop a deeper relationship with the characters because you actually are seeing them grow, and you automatically feel more involved in their life. Like, you watch a film and you're like, how does this relate to me? You develop this connection, and I felt like that bond was strengthened between me and the characters because I did actually see them grow. I felt like I knew them. It was like giving me, it's why I'm so connected to Harry Potter. I feel like I've grown up with those people, but this movie did that for me. So that's where a lot of like my fan feelings go towards this movie. I had some problems a little bit here and there, but overall I think it's amazing what they did.
I have to tell you guys something kind of embarrassing off the bat though, okay? So because I've clearly been living under a rock, it was maybe 30 minutes into the movie, I went to go see the movie with Phil. When I turned over to him and I was like, how are they casting all these actors that look so much like each other? I've like really been living under a rock to not know that for the past 12 years this movie has been filming. And he was like, ooh, rocks. Like, come on, girl. So after that point, I was like, oh, okay, wow, I'm really enjoying the setup of this.
It's the great CG.
Right. Oh, really? They
really good aging process.
Job, man.
They stretched them out.
I have to tell you guys that because it's too embarrassing and wonderful of a fact to keep to myself. So
that's
just
a great fact.
Aware.
Thanks for sharing.
I think actually,
and it'll just stay amongst us.
I
promise not to tell anybody.
Yeah, please don't tell our fans. They would never trust me again.
It actually is interesting that you bring that up though, because I've already heard a few of my friends who've seen it who were like, they didn't know anything going into it and have said the same thing, that they're like, oh yeah, it's the same people, and then they learn throughout. Then they like learn after they watch or whatever. So I don't think it's actually that uncommon.
Sure. Phil, how about, well, Phil, you did know going in.
Yes,
So,
I
like-
did. I turned to her and I was like, Rox, they filmed it for 12 years.
Yeah.
And what is your take on it? Obviously, you saw the movie. You're part of our awesome group.
Sure. You guys have a lot to get through, but I'll give my quick opinion. I enjoyed it. I was along with Roxy in that camp that it was too long. Now, partly, I will say it was the movie experience in the sense that it was freezing in there.
Oh.
But we had some really weird movie. The audience, they were like cracking up.
My
throughout
audience
the
was
entire
dying the
movie.
entire movie.
And it was cold and it
I
was
was
late.
laughing a lot.
Yeah, I was laughing too.
There was like cackling.
No,
right?
yeah, there was crazy laughter. Crazy laughter in my theater.
Well, what do you think, Demetri?
Right off the bat, I didn't know about the 12-year process. I didn't know how it was always going to be put together. First off, I love the movie. I think it's what I love about the movie-going experience. It showed me something I'd never seen before, which I love doing. It also is something that's not going to be duplicated. You can't make a franchise out of this. This is a one-shot deal.
Yeah.
No other studio is going to take this
Adulthood.
risk.
No, they
No,
thought
it's-
about doing
just kidding.
Girlhood, but they actually said that all the footage they used of Lorelei Linklater, who's the sister,
Yeah.
is in the movie. They don't have like extra footage of
No,
her,
yeah.
Right.
because they were filming it with the intention that it's his story. Because they were like, oh, can there be a Girlhood? But the editor said that there can't.
Yeah, and look, I just felt that on so many levels. Number one, if we want to talk about the production side, IFC took such a gamble, and I understand the movie only cost $2.4 million all in. They filmed this over 12 years, filming about a week and a half, depending on the situation, per year, and it was like $200,000 per. Great, but the risk involved. What happens? You don't know if the kids he could get hit by a car. He could grow up to be a drug dealer and thrown in jail. Or you don't know any of these outside factors that happen after filming. And for somebody to back this and to say, yeah, we're gonna do this, and then to have your actors like Ethan Hawke, and this is the other thing that I particularly loved about this. We have Patricia Arquette.
Yeah.
Okay, and now they have busy lives. They're doing this, and the mere fact that they believe in Richard Linklater, they do this. When you look at Patricia Arquette, now please, people, I'm saying this as I think it really lent to the credibility of this movie, because various tabloids, papers, she had her weight loss, weight gain. She was going through a very popular television show at the time that she was on, but we see that, and that's part of life.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved it.
I loved that too.
And for me, I really felt, since we first start with the boy laying in the grass, it was literally a slice of life movie. There were times where I actually felt I was watching something real unfold in front of my eyes. I had to remind myself that this was fiction. This was written. This was meant to be this way. And I felt like I was watching a time capsule.
Oh, yeah.
And to me, I was so happy and very proud of like what they accomplished in the boldness of what they were able, which Richard Linklater set out to do, because just by the mere fact of it never having been done before. And then when all is said and done, I felt like I did watch like a slice of life, and we watched Boyhood. We watched him go from 6 to he's going into college. He's
18.
He's 18. And to me, like, yes, it ran long, but how do you capture that without it being 2 hours and 45, 2 hours and 50 minutes?
The editor said that they originally tried to make each year about 10 minutes, 10 to 12. And then as they were editing, they found that, some years ran over a little bit, because their goal was like 120 to like 180 minutes. And honestly, like, the length did not bother me that much. There weren't points that I was like, this part of the story is killing me, or like they could cut this, because I just felt like it told the story so well and it flowed so nicely into each other. And my favorite part of this film was that it never showed. My one friend said that nothing really happened in it, and I was like, yeah, you're kind of right, but it was nothing. They didn't show him having sex for the first time. They didn't show him drinking beer for the first time or the breakup. They didn't show
him drinking beer for the first time.
No, I don't actually think it was the first time, because nothing was like the first time or the last time. It was all like the middle points. And I really thought that was interesting, because it was the life in between the big moments. And Patricia Arquette at the end kind of says, like, I just thought there'd be more. And I'm like, so great.
And I almost disagree with you, though, because I think when she said that line to me, I felt like they were encapsulating a lot of her big moments. Her getting divorced, her getting married.
But you don't see the marriage. You don't see the wedding. Like in other movies, you see the wedding is the big
part.
The
wedding is the scene. But I think that what you're getting is what the real marriage is. It's not like the wedding day, but it's what the marriage was.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like, it's cool that you didn't see those big like, we didn't see him break up with his girlfriend.
No.
Right,
we saw the awkward conversation of them like trying to be friends afterwards.
Right.
I kind of agree with you, but the thing that set me off a little bit, and maybe it's because I'm somebody who is so used to nowadays things where I'm like, oh, what happened? Like, what was the incident that changed you? What happened in your life that made you who you are? And I guess some people just don't have one big traumatic experience. Some people don't live like that. I find in movies a lot of times that happens. To the point where by the time that we did see him drinking that beer with his friends, and we see they're throwing that ninja star, I'm like, somebody's going to die. Somebody's going to die on this ninja star. Like, that every time we saw something, I was like, uh-oh. Like, I kind of felt like playing mom, like, oh, somebody's going to hurt. But then nobody ever did. And I was like, is that realistic? I feel like people have things that happen, like events that take place.
Well, I feel like there were events, though. I felt like these were... Like, if you remember your life, I feel like a lot of these moments that they shared with us were moments that you would remember.
Yeah.
Like, he would remember that, like, this is the thing that's coming to head, the time where the alcoholic stepfather threw the glass. Like, no, that wasn't the time they got married or the time they got divorced, but that was a catalyst for change.
Sure.
That was a big, that was a moment, that was a solid memory. Like, oh, it wasn't just a bland day that passed by. That was the day that my stepdad threw something. That was the day that my mom came home when we moved out. That was the day that they didn't break up, but that he found out that he wasn't going to prom, like, with his girlfriend. Like, they were it wasn't exactly a huge event where everyone was present to look, but it was, I remember that day.
Yeah, and to your point, Roxy, about like the start, like, it was, because there was another scene like that too, where, and again, I think that regarding the ninja star, there was a scene in a car too where somebody was on their phone or something, not necessarily paying attention. I was like, oh, this isn't going to end well, or something's going to happen. But I think we're conditioned, because that happens in every movie. But when you think about your childhood, your girlhood, we always, as a boy,
you get yourself in dangerous situations.
I was playing with dangerous things, like,
Yeah.
and I was doing stupid things like jumping out of
Fires
trees,
and caves and water and whatever.
So I didn't get killed. There were some scrapes that I may have gone into with falling down or whatever, but so I liked how it led the suspense. But at the end, I was like, all right, nothing happened. But that's the way childhood, like, you do play with dangerous toys. All the time as growing up. It's only when you get older that you're not playing with ninja stars and throwing them by people's heads. Again, for me, like that line that you said about her going, I thought there'd be more.
That she said,
and it is such a poignant line, because it's like when John Lennon, there was a great article in the Boston Globe, which I will share with everybody, but it's references John Lennon, like, life happens while everybody else is making plans. Life continues to happen, and if you don't, just taking from the Ferris Bueller rule, life happens pretty fast. If you don't stop and take some time and look around, you're gonna miss it. And Patricia Arquette's character, our lead male character, our boy who's growing up, everybody's going through these changes, and they could be missing certain kind of things if they keep on focusing on the bad things. And Patricia Arquette is at a point in her life where she's like, wow, I thought there was going to be more, but when you look back, she had a lot. Maybe not all of it happy.
Right.
So
she stole a lot of this movie for me. She stole the show. I remember halfway through, thinking, I wonder why this is called like Boyhood instead of like Familyhood, because her character was very strong for me throughout, and I had a lot of relationship or wants or hopes for her character and for what she was going through. And being that typically in a typical movie format you do have your main lead, and the title implies that we're supposed to be kind of on his side the entire way through, and for me I was on Patricia's side almost the entire way through until like the very last maybe
Were
quarter.
there really sides though? I felt like they never were in conflict with each other.
No, they're not in
She
conflict.
was your protagonist? Is
Like,
that what
she's
you
the
mean?
one that I'm following this.
Rooting for.
Well, yeah, but you're seeing it through his lens in the sense that he still loves his mom, and so of course he's on his mom's side, and like whatever he's like wanting and things like that, you're seeing it all through his lens, and it was.
It's just,
and
but
your
there's
mother
normally
is
like
such
your
a big part
leads,
of
and
the
then you have
boy.
your supporting
But
characters.
see,
That's typically how things are laid out, and for me, she was as much of,
definitely a
if not
lead.
more, a lead than him in my eyes.
Well, to me, her character, for me anyways, her character was the most tragic.
Oh,
You know, whereas
absolutely.
Ethan Hawke's character, you know, yes, he wanted to try to put everything back. That didn't work out for him. You can tell he had some relationships here and there. But in the end, he settled down, found a woman that he loved, and seemed happy. He recognized the change with him. Yeah, he recognized the change within himself as growing up, selling the car. Patricia Arquette, unfortunately, through my eyes, the way I viewed her, she kept on falling into the same rut.
Yeah,
She
repeating
kept
her same mistakes.
Falling for the wrong guy.
And expecting there to be a different outcome, and
Right.
there never being a different outcome.
And, you know, falling for the guy that seemed like
Good.
who would be fantastic, and then just not there. And it just happened repeatedly.
But it was such a bummer
that's-
to me because I agree with you, but as a woman, I'm looking and I'm like, what are the signs? What are the signs that this guy isn't the right guy?
Well, that's not what the movie was about. The movie was about the boy.
No,
so they weren't going to show that because it's
No,
not
I'm
about
not saying
the mom.
that. That's not where I was going with it. What I'm saying is I felt so bad for her. I was so invested in her that I was like, I feel like I'm on her same page. I don't see, it's not like these guys that we see day one, he's kicking the crap out of her and she's with him anyway. So no, I wasn't saying that we needed to be shown anything. I just felt like that's why I was invested in her character, because I felt like these were mistakes that were very easy to make.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the other thing too, I thought, wow, like, Ethan Hawke seemed to be the best of that bunch, like, because I didn't see him. No, in all honesty, like, I didn't see him being alcoholic. I didn't see him being. He definitely didn't abuse her.
But we also never saw them together.
No, but just.
And we know he left.
The grandmother
yeah,
makes
we
a
know they
good
left.
point. Like, if she just would have waited a little bit, he turned into the man that she was wanting.
Yeah,
she like says that to him. At
and
the
he
end.
was, and he was a good dad, and again, I loved.
You think so?
I do. Coming from, I mean, I really do. He did to the best. Going through and being, I was a little bit older than him when his parents got divorced. I was a little bit older, but you know, there were instances of that movie that reminded me. I mean, my mom definitely was not Patricia Arquette. She wasn't falling into this trap, and my mom, God bless her, kept our nuclear family together. So she wasn't like a Patricia Arquette. And I'm not saying that she failed as a mom, but my dad, there were flashes of watching this movie that reminded me of certain things, of going out with my dad, of my dad taking me out and my brother out to go to a movie, to spend a weekend in New Hampshire, to do all these certain things. And for me, one of the most poignant part of the movie was towards the end when he's talking to his son about his son's breakup. And it was a really great scene as to how the dad tries to cheer him up and tells him, hey, look, you know, lighten up. We don't have the answers to that. What's it all about? I can't tell you what it's all about. Like, but you know, you're going to go on and you're going to get better women. You're going to get, you know, you have so much, you have so much of your life ahead of you right now. And she's the one who, she's the one that's losing. You know, it's her. And I had a conversation that was so similar. My dad did something when I was going through some rough times in a divorce. My dad, an incident happened and my dad diffused it like that. We were at Disneyland. My dad came out to visit. He'd never been to Disneyland. And we're walking through this crowded park. And what are the odds that my ex is there with whoever?
Yeah.
And they're crossing by. And my dad looked up she had looked up, and I just said, just walk away. And then my dad diffused the situation like, boy, she looks like shit. And I was like, and right there, right with that one line, just like in the movie, he diffused all that situation. And I was like, I was so thankful for that. And it just, that conversation that he had with his son over this breakup, to me, it was really true.
Well, let's talk about relationships in the film.
Absolutely.
So all the relationships. I think the relationship between him and his sister throughout the whole film, the way they grew was so great. I mean,
absolutely.
The car trip. If you have a sibling, everyone I'm sure was dying during that
The Britney Spears scene.
I
lost it. I thought that was the funniest thing because I have an older brother and I would just go do the same thing and then cry to my parents like, you don't know what he did to me. And then they would leave the room and I'd be like, sucker.
So you were cackling
torturing
no, I was
and
laughing,
tormenting.
definitely.
It's a funny scene.
Like the relationships.
The car, I know.
Yeah, and then as they got older and she sort of was like, what I loved was there was like, it wasn't very melodramatic, and I loved the relationship between the brother and sister, especially like she never tried to take care of him in any sense. She was like, yeah, you can come stay at my dorm. Oh, I forgot to tell my roommate. Oh.
Yeah.
Like just like little things, and like it was great. And and then obviously his relationship with his mother.
Sure.
Man, the coolest mom for like the whole time I was like,
he comes
man, her
home, he's
parenting
stoned.
skills.
Yeah.
She's so cool.
Well, but they had that. You could tell that they had that understanding. Like, if you're going to be honest with me.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what I appreciated, because basically, again, the filming of this movie, the real boy could have grown up to be a punk. But, in this movie, he's just ambling through life. He's going through boyhood, and he seems to be making half-decent decisions. And as a teenager growing up, he's grappling with certain things. And, he has certain people on his side who support him, including both a mother and a father. And I really sort of kind of appreciated that. Yeah. That he didn't end up growing up. He made good decisions to get himself into school. What will happen after that?
What I have to say on that note, and going back to why I asked if you thought that he was a good father, was I think that there's a very clear distinction that sometimes people confuse between a good person and a good father. And I thought that Ethan Hawke was a really good person. I didn't think he was a particularly great father. I think that he was... at least not to this generation of kids. Who knows about the next son that came out? I think that he was like a good friend, and he gave good advice, and he sat there and he listened. Was he a little bit of an absentee parent? Yes. Was he willing to go on a drive to go get them? Yes. So I'm not saying he was the worst father, but I think that the mom was a very good mother. I think she was very present. I think she was a good mom and a good person, and I think that the dad really missed that fatherly part. And even though the mom was okay with him coming in a little buzzed for his birthday or a little high, and was very understanding, gave him a slap on the wrist when he needed or whatever, I felt like she got it and was a really good parent.
And I totally agree, but I say he was a good dad because when you're in that type of a situation, the father isn't present. I mean, that's just the way that it goes down. I mean, Ellie's in mind. He went to Alaska to go find himself and whatnot, and he came back and he did make a concerted effort. Now, you're not as a boy growing up with the father not living in the house, the father having his own life, trying to make his own living. He wasn't there all the time, and you're right. The mother has to be the anchor. He did do his best, especially as the movie progressed. That's
the thing is, I will say he was a good person. He ended up being a good father, not a great father, because he does grow. So I give him lenience there, but I wouldn't say like overall like, oh, he's great, because it goes from him leaving and being completely absentee to I believe there's a line in there about him being there like once a month to it being like every weekend. It varies. His presence in their life varies, and I think he does give them sound advice. I would also not label him as a great father, though.
I don't know if any of that matters.
No.
But I love what I loved about
it's an interesting choice that they make.
What I love about the relationship between him and his father, though, is that there's always, he does look up to him always, but there's always a tiny bit of tension, and in the end when Ethan Hawke really seems like this great guy, and he's like, you sold the car? Like, the tension's brought right back in. And I love that they always sort of had that there with him, that they didn't always, like, let him off the hook. I thought that was smart.
I agree. In the moments where he was, like, pulling over the car and, like, no, I will not be this kind of dad.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm not going to be that guy. Like, and they were like, Dad runs both ways, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I just thought that it was very, the entire movie for me was very realistic
Yeah.
about things. The only thing, as I said earlier, that wasn't as realistic to me was, and you used this word, I think that somebody would come out with a little more scratches and bumps and bruises or whatever you want to call it, but I'm almost glad it didn't, because otherwise it would have focused too much on an incident as opposed to the 12 years of somebody's life.
And what I love about the realism of the film is the way that the two kids would talk the whole
Absolutely.
time. The way that they were so soft and they would mumble, and I love,
I'm like, what? Huh?
Lorelei Linklater, the way she would just stare,
Yep.
like with no expression, was so brilliant. And I think
They were awkward a little.
Yeah, and for our generation,
Sure.
seeing this, because they're my brother's age, and of course,
Which one of them was
the
your brother?
boy, the boy's my brother.
No, at what time? Like, now they're your brother's age? Or
No, the whole time that they were growing up, the time frames
okay.
that
Like
they
it's
were
the
in.
exact same.
I get it.
My brother's the exact same
get it.
age. And it was just so great because I'm like, that was us. Like 100%, the way we talk to each other, the way we sit there, the way he plays video games. And I love that they had the kid playing video games and they're like getting so mad at them and nothing really happens.
Yeah.
And like, there's like, it's the thing of like, yeah, nothing's really gonna happen. They're gonna grow up and they're gonna be fine. Like, this is just the times in Boyhood. But God, the way that they had them speak, and I thought it was brought to a really nice circle when they were sitting at the table with the mom eating breakfast, and she's like, "Come on, guys," and I'm like, "Sorry, we're just kind of hungover."
Yeah.
And you're like, "Yeah," you're like the whole movie, you're just like a teenager, and you're just going through. You're like,
you going through, and for me too, it was like, again, that time capsule feel is as the years were going on. The other thing that I really appreciated is that it didn't treat the audience, it didn't treat me like an idiot. Like they didn't have to say year 1, year 2, you sort of kind of like, there was something different, and you're like, oh, okay, here's a little bit more here, over here. We got a different music cue that's saying, okay, this is what year we're sort of kind of going into. And I loved how Linklater and her editor and the crew, I love how they wove this tapestry.
Yeah.
And how we act, and this is to me like why I felt I was literally watching something unfold in real time almost. And just how it bobbed and flowed just like life. There are high points, low points, there can be some tragedy, there can be, and I liked how it approached, number one, that Ellar Coltrane as Mason, I felt really did a good job, because how many kid actors, and again, I don't know if he'll ever work again, but I'm saying
some
this
other
like
stuff,
I'm just saying how
like
many
small Austin-based
well,
things.
how many kid actors though have we seen as a child, and then when they grow up, you just because we're so entrenched, we get to see Eller grow up in front of our eyes, and to me that was such an amazing. That we didn't get to miss those years, because imagine, he was so cute as a kid, right? And I'm going to use Macaulay Culkin. No offense to Macaulay Culkin, but I'm going to use him and the little I See Dead People kid. We all
Haley
remember,
Joel Osment.
Haley Joel Osment. We see them in these movies. We see Home Alone. We love them. We see Macaulay Culkin and Uncle Buck. Oh my God, cute as can be. And then, he takes a few years off, and then he does like a movie like The Good Son or something. He's starting to grow up, and we don't see this progression, and it's like, ooh, it's very awkward.
Even worse, it could have been like a Lindsay Lohan situation.
True.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It could have been somebody who, or Amanda Bynes, who literally wouldn't have been able to be in this movie by the end of the movie filming.
And
so more than just a physical appearance kind of thing, it's like you this is such, as you said before, a huge risk. A huge risk.
But
they get tattoos, they get piercings. I guess that's life.
But it's like, how when you with a relative, let's say, or a good friend, maybe somebody they went to high school with, or elementary school, you're spending so much time with them, you're not noticing the changes that take place in life. And that happens in this movie, because especially at the beginning, it was so subtle with him growing up when he's like 6 years old, and then he's going into 7th, 8th. It was like you had to like go, oh, his hair's a little different, or it's a little longer, or his face, oh my God, his voice is starting. Like, we get to see him grow up gradually. But then when you have like movies, and we see Macaulay Culkin as Home Alone, and then we see him in another movie, you're like, well, because we never really got to see him grow up.
Right.
And the only other franchise, and you brought it up earlier, that really, I mean, I always give credit to Harry Potter.
Yeah.
We saw those kids. I mean, it's a coup in casting, but we saw those actors grow up in front of our eyes. And how much great of an experience does it make those movies? I'm a huge fan. And this, I had that feeling too. I'm watching these people, and the adults too. We're watching them grow.
Yes.
And we were seeing little wrinkles here and there. And even their acting techniques were sort of kind of subtle changes here and there from beginning to end. And that's what I loved about this movie. I got to see things that I've never seen cinematically
What I
before.
love too is the way that they time capsuled just the years that they covered. The way they did it with TV, with music, with the clothes,
Current
with
events,
the Harry
politics.
Potter scene.
Well, yeah.
When that scene came up, I was like, "Oh my god, I forgot we did that for
right.
books
With the music.
Showing like the music and the technology from the Game Boy to the iPod, like the
Yeah.
old
Right.
iPod to the
100%.
iPhone, and it was and the clothes. Oh my god, I was dying. But
The
it
Obama
was,
scene with the sign.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's
was
funny
so
because
great.
it's something we chalk up to production design, and really they just had to be honest to the time they were filming.
Yeah.
And it was just like, okay, guys, what's going on right now?
Yeah.
Oh, this is the big event of the year. Let's put it in there and make people
absolutely.
remember.
So interesting because usually, like, even now there are a lot of movies being made about the 90s, but it's hard to really capture it in a true way without being like, okay, big gold earrings, we'll talk about the Spice Girls, like kind of doing like a wash of it. They really did a nice job of like subtle
Exactly. They would
things.
fixate the scenes on one thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we have to cram in 5 references. Let's just talk about this one thing that's going on.
And that's what I loved about it, because they were the audience's cue cards.
Right.
Instead of flashing 1980 something,
Yeah, I know.
1987.
That would have made it such
Right?
miserable
And
to watch.
you know what else it would have made? It would have made the movie longer. I know
Yes,
we're only
I
talking
agree.
like 2 seconds, but we would have been so conscious of the change.
Right.
That we would have been looking for
When's the next year?
Yeah.
Well, not the next year. We'd be looking for what's the indication that I'm in 1985 or whatever, because we'd be looking for that. Instead, it's subtly done. We see like the Atari or the Nintendo. That's what I really loved
Something
about how
else-
Linklater did this.
Yeah, something else that I
So
really
smart.
liked, along with all of this stuff, is maybe it's only because I could really relate to this, but they didn't shy away from casting a bunch of people. Like, it wasn't like he had one, like a group of best friends from beginning
Right.
to end. They were just a bunch of people always coming and going. In my life, like, you have different friends. You have when you're 5 and then when you're 10, and maybe there's one friend that kind of sticks around, maybe there isn't. But every time, I know I've read a lot of things, people being like, I couldn't invest in some of the B characters because they weren't there too much. And I was like, I didn't need to invest in them. They were there and then they were gone, and that's life, and you lose friends and you gain them.
And to me, it
Right.
made the moments where sometimes they came back later
Yeah.
so interesting.
Absolutely.
For
Right,
instance,
like
when
the
his father's
teacher-
roommate came back at the very end and was like, I haven't seen you in so long.
Yeah.
Like, I was like,
Cool,
oh my gosh,
so
that must
cool.
be so weird. He really hasn't
And
seen
then
him in
he's
so
like-
long.
And I love the way that he aged too.
Yeah.
That actor, you still knew it was him, but you were like, yeah, he's older.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
he goes, and this song's out to Mason, and it was a Rolling Stone song, I believe, that he did for him. And it was just, again, that scene to me was a great scene, and I think, to me, would set Mason on a different path, in a sense. I think from there, going into college and all that fun stuff, I think that it was just setting him on a new path of going into adulthood. And we've seen so many coming of age stories, and Lord knows there've been some fantastic coming of age stories. Everything, like, there were hints of this movie that reminded me of Stand By Me, seeing the kids. But as you said, even in Stand By Me, after they have this adventure, those kids end up going different lives.
Yeah. That's because
and-
that's how it works.
That's how it is. And in this movie, we all may have gone to school, elementary school, but they aren't the same friends that we meet new people like you
It was
folks
just
right here.
it was very smart choices,
Yeah.
like how they plan this out, and we're willing to take risk after risk, and not. I feel like when you do take a alternative or different creative path, it's easy to be like, okay, well, let's do something that people do relate to or do expect. And on multiple layers, whether it was the casting, whether it was doing it over 12 years, whether it was letting the writing be a little more free flow, and not a set script for the entire project, all of that is risk after risk after risk, and it came together very well.
Yeah, the editor talks about in an interview the way that they were capturing the footage over the first 4 years. They weren't really throwing much away yet
Right.
because they were still. They were.
You don't know what's relevant.
Well,
Yeah.
and they didn't. Yeah, they didn't
And they
want
don't
to
know
throw
where it's
something
going.
away that later on would be referenced to and they could use. So the first few years, she said that they sort of just kind of built up, and then they.
It wasn't like 4th or 5th year.
Yeah, that they were like, okay.
Well, that you see
save
where
this
it's
away.
going, and then you can kind of direct it more. But if you don't want to limit yourself with that first like 2 years, and there's these little kids, you have no idea what's gonna happen.
He talked about knowing. Linklater talked about knowing where he wanted character arcs to go.
Right.
Like, for example, the first stepfather. He knew he wanted to go there, but they knew that at the honeymoon dinner, or after the honeymoon dinner table, when he like gets mad at them for playing the Game Boy, he knew that they're still in the honeymoon phase, so they're still happy.
But he knew
it's
there's a red
needed.
flag.
Yeah. He had his arcs, and the editor again, like she was the first 3-4 years. She didn't even like she would work about 3 to 4 weeks after each shoot. She would put the stuff together, but she didn't start linking the years together until later on down the line, and that's why too she can't even recall a ton of scenes that they had to deep six. She knows that they had some because certain things had changed, but then they were talking about, well, all right, continuity. Do we want to do this in sort of kind of quote unquote real time? Are we going to do, or do we skip a year and do a flashback to say what happened? But they came to the conscious decision that no, we're going to do a
straight
through
line
line.
time.
And that too,
And that was smart, because if you had to deal with, I think that it was an intriguing and interesting thing that we did have to kind of establish for ourselves when time was changing, or we did have to kind of catch on to the cues that we're in a different year. But they would have had to put more acknowledgement with flashbacks, and I'm really glad they didn't.
Yeah.
I play this game with myself, and I'm sure that they played this game for 12 years, and you guys might have also. But it's the what if game, and I we've talked about it a little bit. But what do you guys think actually would have happened if something had happened to one of these 4 leads? Would they have written it into the script? Do they scrap the project? Do they?
I think they would have written it in.
I think they would have
I
written
don't
it
know
in.
if they lost, because again, I did play that game with this movie,
Well, of
and
course.
if they lost the lead, you can't call it Boyhood.
You don't call it Boyhood, but that wasn't the original title anyway.
Yeah, but it was about Boyhood. Like, you're
12-year
not going to
untitled
have
project.
Yeah, I mean, if for some silly reason something happened to that kid, you filmed 5 years.
I think it turns into a movie of the loss of a kid.
Yeah, I think it kind of just had to change.
I
with
mean,
the
thank
times.
gosh that didn't happen.
Right.
But I think it was. I think they had to adapt.
It's interesting to me because, and I bet you guys read about this too, but obviously he cast his daughter as Samantha, and about 3 to 4 years in, she was like, Dad, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I just don't want to. Can you kill my character off? And he was like, no, that's really not what this movie is. And then she kind of grew into it again and started to love it more and appreciated the fact that she stuck with it. But, it's like when you have a kid and they're in ballet class and they're like, I don't want to take ballet anymore. And you're like, okay, why don't you try soccer?
She was a teenager.
Yeah, you can't really do that when you have a 12-year project going on.
And she didn't want to film that week because there was a pool party going on.
Come on, give her the pool party.
Also, it's an exercise in just kind of patience and waiting, and something that, especially in this instant gratification era, as an actor, of course you want to see the film as fast as it can go out. And most of the time, let's say that's a year and a half, if it's a studio movie, sometimes 3 if perhaps it's an indie. But 12 years to see yourself finally, the finished product. That's a long time.
And, I think as a 6-year-old, do you really have the concept of what is like going on? Like, you're just filming. Oh, okay. I just filmed this movie for like a week and a half. Oh, great. When do we get to see it? I don't know.
I think,
and literally, a 6-year-old wouldn't necessarily have that concept. And again,
I'd say like more big ups though to like Patricia Arquette and Ethan Hawke, people who are names.
Oh my God, yeah.
Who
being
were
like, let me sign on to this 12-year project.
Yeah, who were willing to be in a project like this. And I'm sure because the schedule was just a few weeks each year, that it's easy for them to commit to. But to just
not easy, but easier. Yeah.
Yeah, but to just tell your agents and other people like that, like, I'm doing this project and like this is what's happening, and we're not going to see anything for a few years, and to trust that you yourself will still have a career. Like, it's just very. I was like, wow, great. Like, that's so big on their part for those two actors.
Absolutely. And again, you don't know what within that 12 years may or may not, well, may have happened, I should say. And for them to take the gamble on this, and for them to say, you know, and again, it's just, it comes from their trust, I mean, and love of Richard Linklater. I mean, Ethan Hawke has worked with him many times, and just for them to put their faith to know what he's doing, and that they're able to go, hey, you know, Richard Linklater approaches him and goes, hey, I have this project. It's called Boyhood. You know, originally it's called the 12-year project. Why is it called the 12-year project?
It's taking 12 years.
It's going to take 12 years to film. Are you out of your 12 years to film? How am I going to do, like, what, every day? No, this is what I want to do. And for Ethan Hawke to say, I'm in.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm in. Whatever you want.
I doubt it was but yeah.
You know what?
I don't know though. I think that it's fascinating. I think that they, and from what I read, like they were excited about it. It was like, I mean, as an artist, I think it was something that sparked a lot of their creative interest. And I know Patricia Arquette was very invested pretty quickly, where it was straight on. And to me, people do seek this. Like, it reminded me of how there was the big craze about everyone taking a picture of themselves like every day or like once a year.
Right.
And it was this individual time festival, and this was that to a greater scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the fact that he had the vision for it and got everyone on board and got everyone excited is incredible. And I think that obviously IFC made a really good investment because they are returning well, and that was a lot of trust, because I don't think they even, from what I read, they didn't even have a script, because there wasn't a full script.
What the investment is? So what are we looking at for numbers here? What are they?
$200,000 a year.
Yeah, it was
not how much they put in, how much that they
are getting.
Yeah.
Right now they are approximately, well, their opening weekend was about $387,000, which isn't bad. I think it only opened up
and it was all specialty box office.
Absolutely.
For the first,
and today it still sort of kind of is in specialty box office,
except for it is expanding.
You know, it continues to expand, but I just know that it's not in like the theater by my house yet. You know, total domestic gross is $5 million so far, which is fantastic considering it cost 2.4. And then it's worldwide gross, because apparently this movie has been doing really well in London, is $6.5 million, or just a hair over 6.5. So, you know, it's gaining this momentum. Personally, I think like this can't be ignored when it comes Oscar time.
Absolutely.
You know,
I mean, let's talk about that. I think from editing, directing, like absolutely, and then Patricia Arquette for Best Actress. That's where I'm seeing it.
See, and I agree. I think this is Ethan Hawke's best performance.
I think it was his best performance.
I think it's his best performance, and you know, and Ethan Hawke to me has been like hit or miss, and some of the projects he takes.
I appreciate the risks he takes, because he always seems to be taking risks with the projects he chooses. And I do think he was great in this, but I think Patricia Arquette is going to overshadow it. And I think it'll be all about directing and the editing.
Here's my thing, though. I definitely think, as you said, it cannot be ignored. And I do think it will receive some nominations. And I actually thought that they both deserved nominations.
A Best Picture, do you think?
I think that's where people are talking. I don't think it deserves Best Picture. And here's why. This is something Sarah and I talked about a little bit. That if this didn't take 12 years to film, and this was just this script, and it wasn't these characters from start to finish, just the actual movie, it wasn't mind-blowing to me.
I disagree.
I just didn't think it was. And I liked the movie, and I appreciated it for what it was. But it wasn't life-altering. It didn't make me... I couldn't connect to it in a way I can connect to a lot of other movies. And it didn't make me walk out of there and think, like, holy crap.
See, what I love about it is the subtlety that they use. I thought the subtlety was beautiful, and I think it's such a great contrast to what we've been seeing in film. And it's not a 12 Years a Slave. It's not these like huge historical sad epics that honestly, like, but I'm so partial to slice of life films that those are the ones for me that I connect to the most. And this one, the subtlety and the moments they chose for each year, I just thought were brilliant.
Yeah, and for me, it was the reason why I do think it's going to get nominated. Now, again, after watching it, here's the thing with me. I remember coming out of the theater going, "Wow, I just saw something that I've never seen done before." Kudos for that, because I always appreciate that. In fact, I walked out of the theater pretty much with the same excitement as when I walked out of Gravity. I understand that they're two different movies, but here's why. Gravity showed me something that I had never experienced before, and I thought it was amazing. It just from a visual effects wise, to me it was a great story in showing how gravity works and how she descends, whatever. This movie showed me something that this year I have ever seen before, period. And how it subtly sunk into me that on my car ride home, I was like, geez, this movie has really seeped into me. I've thought, God, like the amazing cinematic, like movie-going experience, like it showed me something different amidst a summer in which people have been criticizing various films and everything. And again, I'm not saying this movie is for everybody. Its length, could go against people. And because we talk about it so much, there is an overhype. I think I saw it at a good time. But there might be overhype where people come out going, well, there wasn't really a story. And I say, no, there really was a story. It gradually goes along, and it really is about boyhood. It is about, I am seeing this boy. Yeah, I'm watching somebody grow up. And look, for me right now, today, I say this is, with everything that I've seen, and I have some favorites and some fun movies, but right now, for me, Boyhood would get my nod. Now, I'm going to throw in there the one movie that I think is going to change it for me personally, is
Into the Woods.
Interstellar.
Interstellar. I think Interstellar is going to is going to change it for me when I see it, because again, I think it's going to show something that we've never seen before. I think it's Chris Nolan, strong storyteller. Sadly, I think Boyhood might be overshadowed by that, but I think it'll be nominated for sure. It can't be ignored as a Best Picture. Just the way that Return of the King doesn't get ignored for winning Best Picture when you had two movies prior that were really good and they sort of kind of got ignored. Like, you gave it to Return of the King. I think Boyhood gets nominated because of its
I think it gets nominated for what it did, just like Gravity got nominated for what it did. Gravity, visual presentation, this, a testament to art, to a passion project, to taking time. I don't think it wins, and I don't think it wins because of the reason Roxy said, where I am so amazed by what they did. I am so amazed by the risks they took, and I think it was edited well together, and I thought there were some really powerful scenes that were well contrived or written or picked out. But overall, if I took away the artistic endeavors of those choices and just relied straight on the overall acting, the overall arcs and storyline, I wasn't like floored by that. I thought it was good. I thought it was interesting. I thought that I did learn a little bit, but it wasn't something that I was like, I'm going to watch this movie 1,000 times. I appreciate it. I will watch it again. I will probably buy it. I will say, you did a fantastic job. You are creative and brilliant.
You did what you set out to do.
Yes, for the theme, for what you wanted, you made your movie. It just wasn't the absolute, like, my dream movie of what I want to watch all the time. But it's amazing. Like, I'm not trying to take away from it.
I don't ever think watching movies all the time, though, makes them Best Picture nominees, because I don't want to watch 12 Years a Slave ever again.
Yeah, and I'll be honest.
And it wasn't a bad movie.
No, and I agree 100% with what you said. And I will say that I'm more than, because of the research that I've done and because I've seen this movie. I can't revisit this movie again because I don't think, like, to me, I don't feel a pressing need to watch the movie again, and I'm not going to buy it because I don't know that I want to sit down for 3 hours to watch it. It doesn't mean that this is a bad movie. Yeah. I just think that for me, it really did sink in, and I really think that
I think sometimes, though, if you take away all the... We love movies, so we research them. We talk about them. We know the behind-the-scenes story. If you watch 5 movies in a row, you know nothing about Boyhood. You're never going to learn anything about Boyhood. You're not going to learn about how it was made, why it was made, what they were telling. You're just watching these movies, like, back to back to back. I want to pick whichever one I was most emotionally drawn to or most emotionally affected by or...
connected to, like the best.
And this, most likely, without all the information surrounding it, isn't going to win for me. It's going to be great.
I totally disagree.
Yeah, but you're cheating yourself because you're saying that you don't like... part of the reason why we love movies is because of the artistic things that go on.
I'm talking about Best Picture. I'm talking about who's going to win for me in a group of films.
Yeah. Let's move on. I want to hear about what other critics are saying. I want to hear about that kind of stuff.
I mean, everybody really loves this. But one thing, I have to go back to editing again because this actually is something that's very interesting because we're talking about a time-lapse movie, right?
Right.
So the editor, Sandra Adair, one of the challenges that they ended up that she had, they're like, was that they started editing the movie at the time. The popular thing was Final Cut Pro, and that was like the big editing tool to use for all editors. As time was going on, that changed. Like Avid came into the picture, and they had to, like, literally, once Avid came in and nobody was using Final Cut Pro, they literally had to change their thinking, the technology. So I mean, they had technology they had time going against them because technology was changing, and now you don't really hear about Final Cut Pro anymore, but you do hear about Avid, and they had to switch all their stuff over to Avid so they had a better sense of what was going on. And to me, I find that fascinating, and it's
part of the 12-year process.
Part of
the actors are changing, right. The director's growing, the technology.
That's where I think the most acknowledgement goes. Like, that's the things that win. Like, best direction, yes. Like,
they filmed it on 35 millimeter too, because they knew that technology was going to be changing so quickly,
right?
And they wanted the film to still look the same.
Yeah,
which I thought was really interesting.
And they would have had to have stayed with, if they filmed digitally 12 years ago, I mean, that movie would have looked like it was taken on an iPhone.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to talk about, if you guys don't mind, is the music, because I always bring up I just thought that they hit it on the head with this. It was not they didn't Google what is the number one song in this, so we can whatever. But there were some popular songs, because when you're in the bowling alley and there's a song on the radio, it's probably a popular song, you know.
Absolutely.
But then I don't know. Just from the second I heard Yellow play, I was like, I'm into the music. I'm into this film. I thought that they did a really great job. It wasn't overkill, the music. They weren't trying to, like, shove it in your face. It was there when you wanted it. It wasn't when you didn't.
Not every year had, like, a big song that you were like, this is the song of the year.
Yeah, right.
It was, some were huge hits, some were more subtle.
And again, it was the subtlety of the time change that, you know, as an audience, you say you weren't a music aficionado. There was something else in the movie that would signify the change. If you like the music, but you say you're not as observant, and you don't know when
Obama was the president,
right? Well, you know, something or when he's running. But I'm being honest. Like, if your cue is to pick up on music, then you go, oh, I remember when that song came out.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm not really recognizing that his hair is a little bit different, or the style might be, you know. And that's what I like, that they threw it in there, but it was very sly, subtle. And you sort of kind of had to go along. And one of my favorite scenes is when they were camping, and they had the awesome Star Wars conversation. And they're not going to make it. They're never going to go over there. And I'm like, oh, that is so funny. So funny. And it doesn't date the picture, because that's actually, I've had that conversation with my friends.
Exactly.
Until, you know, and we wouldn't know the was.
It's how you thought then.
Absolutely.
And I loved that element, especially not only with Star Wars conversations, but with, you know, the political conversations, where it's not like, oh, remember when people thought that? It was like, there was an element of, like, real, like, no, that's actually the time, and it was captured accurately. And
one thing I love too is that because it was captured in real time, like when it was happening, I think a great example of, like, costume design, and it's hard to do like music design and costume design when you're looking back, because you're like, okay, what was the cool thing, what were people wearing, you look back at magazines and things,
right?
But I think something that always is missed is, like,
the average,
when people throw back to fashion. So, like, when he's wearing the
like, I could be wearing a 90s thing in the 2000s,
right? Like, the mom's fashion was always a little, like, outdated, which I thought was great, because they didn't have a lot of money, which was true to fact. Like, she was never wearing, like, the hippest thing or whatever. But also, he at one point is wearing, like, a super 70s, like, design
Ethan
shirt.
Hawke, you mean?
No, it's Mason.
Mason.
It's in when they're, like, at the club in Austin with his dad and his friend is playing. That shirt he's wearing is, like, a super 70s design shirt, but for his character, he would totally
look for a 70s design shirt.
You would usually never, as a costume designer, be like, oh yeah, he's gonna throw back his fashion. Like, it's just little things like that I'm like, gosh, so great.
Yeah,
really great.
And I also feel that the movie won't be necessarily dated.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because it does capture, it's sort of kind of as like
dated in a way.
Well, it's sort of kind of like watching American Graffiti, which is another great, or A Stand By Me, which is a great, coming of age story that takes place within a certain year, and it captures a day or a night. This movie captures 12 years, but, I think if you watch this movie 20 years from now, you will still have that time capsule feel, and you won't necessarily feel that you're watching, an old movie, so to speak.
How cool is it for the actors to go back and watch this?
Yeah.
I just think that if this was me in it, I would be like, look at the 12 years of my life. I just think that that's so fascinating. It's like home videos.
I did feel like that at one point. I was like, I felt like I'm watching their home videos. Like, there was an aspect to that. And
Especially with the sibling relationship. I felt like that a lot.
Somebody else told me, they were like, you know what it felt like? It felt like really good reality TV. And I'm like, whoa, that's weird to think. But yeah, that's sort of like what reality TV is wishing it could be, capture and things. But yeah, it was just like, and what an interesting concept for Linklater to have because he sort of was coming up with this right as the reality bubble was hitting.
Yeah.
And for him to be like, we're going to push through this, and this is the storyline we want, and it's all going to be basically handheld. And it was just so super interesting in everything that they did. So, gosh.
Yeah, and again, it shows us something we've never seen, and I don't think we're ever going to see again. No studio would put that risk. Right. No studio would take...
Oh, not when they're doing sequels and remakes and... What a great film to squeeze through.
Exactly. And again, no studio is going to say, hey, they're taking a big risk when it's taking them a year and a half to make a movie. They're not going to spend 12 years... or 10 years, 5 years,
they want the return a lot quicker than that.
Absolutely. And so that's why I do credit IFC for backing Richard Linklater and saying, you know what, this is a different kind of project.
We believe in you.
And yeah, we really do. And then he turns out a really good movie. And I take it, this is above and beyond just like an experiment. I didn't feel like I was being experimented on. I actually felt
like he loved it. I felt like it was his baby.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm sure like he's like, that's what I felt. It's like people say you have your passion project, and he invested everything, and every year I felt like I just imagined him being like, oh, and here's my Boyhood week, and one day it will come out.
And it does focus on story. It is like this is a movie that is a story. I mean, we're watching 12 years go by. We're watching the same actors come back and get on through life.
Do you guys ever wondered why he chose the position in life for this family, like where they stood financially and things like that? Because I thought that was really interesting that he made them, right at that poverty line. He made them house poor, as she says in that one part, and you really see the struggle that the mom goes through, and through the boy's eyes of not actually being affected as much by it. Usually in the media we hear the mom's story for all these types of families. In the talk show world you always hear, like the mom that has to work and single mother and pulling. And it was so interesting to see this type of family through the boy's eyes, and that obviously he was being affected by it, but it wasn't running his life. And I thought that was so interesting.
And he went through a natural progression as well, being that as a little kid, there was the hope that maybe the parents would get together.
Yeah.
There was the, oh, you're going to stay over? Or why are you leaving? Like, you should stay over. And mommy, daddy brought this for
got
you.
that.
And how great was the brother and sister reaction when the dad walked out, when they're watching through the window, and it wasn't melodramatic. It was like, well, that's what we know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the surprise. And I thought that was so great.
Same, yeah.
Because usually that would be like the sad music playing and then them being sad. But it was just like, okay, that's our life.
And again, it was captured very real. Very realistic. Like, it didn't... There was very little sentimentality or over sentimentality in this movie. And so... And I appreciate... Look, this movie is different from A Stand By Me or The Way Back. Because those are scripted movies that I love. And they have the sentimental moments, but they've got an hour and a half, 2 hours to put all that in there, and it is scripted, and you're picking these moments, and I get it. But when he sets out to do this one just sort of kind of goes through the life lessons, and there can be some poignant parts, there can be some shocking parts, like when that drunken stepfather throws that glass. I mean, that that was again, I felt like I was watching something that was real. And I really did have to remind myself a couple of times going, this isn't a documentary. I'm really watching something that they sat down and he scripted out. I go, and that to me was just amazing because that thorough timeline, and I don't experience it in a Stand By Me kind of a movie because you know that that's like a movie.
Going back to her question about the poverty line, I thought that it was really interesting because I thought a couple times they were gonna like address the fact that maybe that's why she ends up with a man so often, and the fact that they didn't, I really appreciated. It wasn't like thrown in my face like, oh, I'm going to be with this guy because I don't have enough money to support my family. But we do see that the second man she's with after he was the one in the military, he is like, I'm supporting this family, I'm doing all this, and I was like, oh yeah, there is this aspect of money here, and this isn't something like she can just leave whoever she wants. She shares assets. There's this house. There's this whole different thing. But then she still was trying to give her kids money when he's going off to visit his sister. Here's this money. It's in case of emergency. I want it back. Like he, you know. But they didn't make a big point for him to fight with her about it. Like, no, I'm not giving it back. You know, it wasn't about that. But it was throughout the entire movie. We were very aware of the fact that they were not millionaires.
Yeah, and the kids understood that. Right. You know, they understood it too. And you know what I loved about the Patricia Arquette character is that regardless of her choice in men, she, for herself, in some respect, she was making good choices for herself. Going back to school, becoming a teacher, doing something that she never thought of accomplishing before in her life, and I like that aspect. You know, I thought that was she became a responsible person, and she gained the respect. And one of my favorite scenes, scene when they're in the restaurant having breakfast. And the manager comes over and says, I was the pool boy.
Yeah. That was
you inspired me.
Only corny thing in the movie.
Really? I thought it was.
But I liked it.
But I think sometimes corny things actually like do happen.
Yeah. No, that was the only thing though in the film that like stood out the most to me. But it wasn't horrible. Like it wasn't like a bad moment.
See, but to me, I love that moment because it did justify. It's something
you changed people's lives.
She changed somebody's life, and so when she does say, "Wow, I thought there'd be more," it's like, well, look what you did to this one, like this person who couldn't speak English, really, and he was a pool boy, and now look, and he's so proud, and you weren't even his teacher. You just gave him inspiration.
I liked every time she said, and excuse my French, cut the shit. You know, like every time she looked at her kids and was like you
cut
guys,
that shit attitude.
Yeah, cut that shit attitude, man. Because every time that she said that, I was like, it was completely justifiable. And these kids, like sometimes we make up problems in our head, and we're like, we had this huge problem, and they kept making up these problems that were somewhat relative, but not huge deals. And she would just be like, yo, cut the shit. Like I can't deal with this. And they'd be like, all right. Okay, fair enough.
And, you know, and I will say, too, that I think that the sister came, I mean, I never felt that the sister, as she grew older, didn't care or love her brother. You know, and then there was, like, the little thing at the end where she sort of comes full circle and sort of sticks up for him, or when it was high school graduation time, and... Like, I just felt that their relationship was real. It wasn't over-sentimentalized. And I guess that's one thing about this movie. Like, it did play out. It played out like literally like a true slice of life where Linklater, I guess he could have over-sentimentalized, but could you imagine what melodrama this movie would have been? And I really like the fact that the melodrama in it was life. Life was the melodrama. Men and women alike can make bad choices, and the men and women they decide to be with, they make the choices to go on, they make the choices to take care of their kids, and how they do it. And you know, you didn't really have to add anything more other than, like, could you imagine like how much more if they spent on the drunken family?
Right.
But they didn't.
What I love about the theme of that was always in the film was everyone's just trying to figure it out. Whatever it is, whether it's life itself or, you know, it went with Mason and his father and the mother, and they were all, whatever situation they were in, they were just figuring it out. They were almost winging it, and it's so great because nobody ever
no one has the answer, and
they
use that as a line. There's some very poignant lines, and I feel a lot of them did come from like the parental figures, and they weren't like this is a criticism. They were more of like like I can't answer these questions for you, or what is life? Like all of that wasn't like I'm trying to instruct you, I'm trying to tell you. It was just like it is what it
says
is.
At one point, he's like, we have to handle this more naturally. Like, I don't know, so just kind of live.
And what about the character? Again, another one of my favorite parts too was the manager of the restaurant.
I loved him.
Okay, he was
so
great,
funny.
but again,
So funny.
he was funny. Yet he was more positive
awkward.
reinforcement than the photography teacher
Yeah.
was. Right?
What was that with the photography
Oh, I
teacher?
loved that scene.
I'm
in
not
the
saying I didn't
bathroom.
like it,
Yeah.
but I was just like, it reminded me of conversations I've had people before, and I was like, what are you trying to say
What
to
are
me?
you trying
Like,
to do?
What are
Right.
you trying to accomplish
It was
here?
the War of Art argument, like the book, The War of Art. It's the War of Art of like, it doesn't matter where your talent is. If you don't have the work ethic, nothing's gonna happen.
Do you
It was
remember
great.
that in high school, and you felt like you like had this craft, and then they're like, go do the football game, and I'd be like, screw you go do the football
But
game.
then they're like trying to secretly help you.
help you, right? I know,
And
I
you're-
know.
Right, and and again, to me, it goes to there's a teacher who could be approaching this a completely different way to inspire him, other than just lecturing and coming down on him. I mean, you want to inspire the fact that he loves his photography, but there wasn't anything that told Mason, man, you've got this amazing eye. Look, I appreciate everything you do.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk. We need to. What are your aspirations? Like, there was nothing that was encouraging. Where the restaurant manager guy was, hey, dude, I see.
fry cook.
Well, he says, I see potential in you.
Yeah.
You're a good kid. Like, and he just showed up like late. He was eating off of the plate. It was just, he had that with the
girl, yeah.
waitress. But that manager said, hey, I see potential in you. And I know being a fry cook that may not be his goal's ambition, but he was giving him more responsibility. And he said to him,
Some people know how to give you a
that's
little
right.
more than others.
And,
Yeah.
and I appreciated that, because you never know where that positive reinforcement is going to come from. We had it through the mother, and I think we did get it through Ethan Hawke's character too. But when you have it from outside people, sometimes it means a little more, that somebody believes in me as a kid.
It
And I
also
like
just
that.
depends what affects you, though, because for me, I don't think he approached it in the right way, but the darkroom scene, I had an experience like that in high school, very much so, where I think someone was trying to help me, but it just wasn't coming across that way. It was coming across as a lecture, and I was like, why are you still talking?
Yeah.
I really want to get back to what I'm doing.
You're 17 years old, and you're like, shh, stop.
But it's the in real life, speeches, monologues aren't scripted. Some people, the words don't come out right, and that's what that conversation was to me. It's like he was trying to be helpful, he was trying to give him direction, and it was more of just coming out as a long-winded speech that you were like,
that he was going to rebel at because
Yeah.
he's 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
And instead of
I liked that it wasn't
nurturing.
perfect.
Yeah.
I liked that what he was
agree.
telling him, his advice wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just loved that once he was a teenager, he was just the whole time his attitude was so whatever.
Well, yeah.
Like,
Say.
I like this. Yeah, that's anytime someone would tell him to do something, he'd be like, okay.
Right.
And it was
Okay.
so great.
Yeah.
And I just don't even know how you'd be able to coach an actor into something like that if he wasn't sort of playing this role the whole time,
Yeah.
which was great. And just how to be so relaxed and so mumbly and just have everything right there in his face and just nothing going on in his eyes. I loved it. It was so great.
Right, and I also thought this was cool. I always bring up weird things about people's face, but he had some acne going on, and he
Yes.
had something, and we didn't
Absolutely.
shy away from the close-ups. And there was a time period where I was like, "Oh, you're kind of awkward, but you're endearing and a little weird, whatever." I don't care.
His
Yeah,
facial hair was kind of gross.
Yeah. And I was like, you didn't shave for the last 4 days, maybe, but that's okay, whatever. All right, bring on the close-ups.
Yeah.
And I like when they do that instead of ooh, look at that pimple. Let's just stay in the wide.
Yeah. And
I appreciate
and
that.
again, that was all a part of growing up.
Yeah.
And again, one of those things that I just appreciated about how this movie was put together and done, and it really did capture something realistic for me. And I don't know, that's why I honestly do believe I celebrate this movie, because it is a great feat in filmmaking. This is the kind of movie that I love going to, because when I get out, I feel like I've just witnessed a movie, or I just watched a movie that I haven't seen before. It drew me in. I mean, it may have done it subtly. I may not have walked out. I may not through the movie gone, oh my God, wow, this is amazing. But I got sucked in very slowly.
And it's inspiring.
Yeah.
That's what I think I appreciate, and I'm inspired. And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts about, like, you know,
I
regarding?
think we covered it all.
Good work,
I think
team.
we got
Yeah.
it. Yeah, we dissected this one.
Yeah, I mean, I
Quick
can't think of-
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Where does it put this movie with his other movies, especially ones kind of, let's say, like Waking Life or whatever?
Dazed and Confused.
What do you mean? Where
Well-
does it put it? Like on a scale of like?
Yeah,
best
in the
and-
grand
That's
grand scheme
hard
of
'cause they're
Richard.
So, I feel like his movies are kind of all different.
I
Like
thought it was different. I definitely
Yeah.
wouldn't expect this out of him. I think that it was clearly, as Sarah put it before, a passion project, and you could see that. He was very invested in it. So I would put it as my favorite of his films, I think.
I mean, his
If
before.
that's the question.
Yeah, I mean, his before movies, before Sunset, before Sunrise, before what was the last
Midnight,
one? Before Midnight, I
right?
think.
Yeah.
And you know, those movies too are about a passage of time.
Yeah.
And about the passage of relationship.
Well,
I think
usually all his films take place in 24 hours. If they're not one of those, which I love. I love when it's a story in a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
So he's
Very
always
different.
very aware of time. I
Right.
think in his
And I think this is his most. I think this is his. Well, obviously, it's his most ambitious.
yeah.
And perhaps his most accomplished. I mean, he really put 12 years of his life in thought and prep and picking these people and getting it done right. I mean, his casting choices were on the money. And, you know, he couldn't have done better, I think. I mean, the kid is great. And, yeah. So, how about you, Phil? Oh, sorry.
I just have one
Apologies.
question for you guys.
Yeah.
Because I went and saw this with a group of friends, and what everyone was talking about at the end, besides all the cackling laughter, which our theater was full of, and we were like totally trying to figure out what everyone was laughing at certain points, because I thought it was funny, but our theater
Yeah.
thought it was hilarious,
Like,
like
yeah.
I was laughing
slapstick,
a lot.
like crazy, like
Yeah.
literally filled with hyenas. But him not kissing her at the end, that choice of
that girl.
at the very end, like all of the people in my theater were talking about it.
I didn't care. That was like not something I walked away with. I wasn't
Yeah.
like,
I had
what
a lot of
happened
people
there?
walk away with that.
I
And so
thought,
was just wondering if
it would have
affected
been
you
so
guys.
forced and
Me too.
awkward if they would have kissed.
Yeah, me too, because of what they just
They
literally
just met,
met. and
yeah.
You sense
And they
that-
were on drugs. It's not like they weren't on ecstasy. They're not sexually hyped. I thought it would have been super
It's
weird.
not like she was the love line the whole story. Then we were waiting for one kiss for 12 years. Like, I just didn't care about her story enough. I cared about his story, and she wasn't really, the kiss wasn't part of it.
And his father's the conversation he had with his father came back to my head, and here it is. He's meeting somebody, and you know what? Maybe. Like, this is maybe.
Yeah, to me it was
It's a
interesting,
nice
and like
big
we were all
maybe.
talking about, we were like, it was kind of a strange ending, and then it almost felt like he broke the fourth wall in the last like 3 seconds and like saw the camera and looked at it and looked away with like a smirk. But I don't know. That
A
was just
nod
something.
to us, like, what's up, guys? I know you're there.
Interesting. I
Yeah,
didn't realize-
like that's how I
didn't notice
felt. I felt like you almost thought they were gonna kiss, and then he moved his head, and I felt like he looked into camera lens and like smirked, like
Well, he
very
did
very
smirk.
subtly.
Well, I did, but I just took
and
that
I
as
felt
a
it, and I
smirk.
was like, what?
Yeah, and I took it as a smirk, as you know what, things are gonna be okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna like this. You know, I'm gonna, you know, and I'm going on to the next chapter. And
Adulthood.
so far, you know,
On
I
to
think
the
it could be
next.
okay. What did you
Manhood.
think, Phil?
About the kiss specific or
Well,
the
about
non-kiss?
that and about your question.
I mean, I think he's always taken risks, so I don't know. You know, is this a movie? Could I have put it beyond him? Absolutely not. I mean, he's always pushed the envelope, and but yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what he kind of does next after this. You know, you guys kind of put it well in the sense that he really is an artist and he's looking for something different. And I think ultimately the movies that he makes are so uniquely his own that I don't think anyone else can replicate his style.
Yeah, and at last check, Rotten Tomato rating 99%.
Yeah.
I can't
It's
recall
incredible.
I've
like the
never-
last. So I don't see
And it
how this
stuck
doesn't
there.
get a
Yeah.
Best
Nomination.
Picture nomination. It may not win. I just don't see how it doesn't get one. And I'm trying to think. Oh, IFC put it out. You know, I'm sure the campaign for this is going to be.
Right now, it
Pretty
has
big.
my best director nod.
Sure.
I give it that.
Absolutely. but it's got to be Best Picture. So, well, folks, we've got so much more coming up in the near future. We have Wish I Was Here, another Kickstarter movie that we will talk about. Guardians of the Galaxy, big movie coming up. Can't wait for that, and so much more this summer. And God, do you believe that we're going to be heading into fall?
And you just did a Lucy earlier today.
We talked about Lucy, Luc Besson, rhymes with croissant. And so thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Thank you, awesome panel. This was a great show.
I said yellow so many times, I thought he would end with it. Come on now, Phil. How many times did I nod to yellow?
This is pre-picked by Marissa.
There you go. Well, hi, Marissa. And please, how can they contact you?
You guys can find me on Instagram and Twitter at ChloeWestX.
You can find me everywhere at Roxy Striar.
You can find me here or at AfterBuzz TV.
You can find me here, and for those people on my email, I've been contemplating Twitter, but I'm afraid. Anyways.
Hashtag that side of the table get a Twitter.
I know. What's wrong with you?
I don't know. Anyways, but thank you very much for watching, listening. I'll see you next time. Bye, folks.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.
Thanks for watching Anatomy of a Movie on YouTube. For more on your favorite movies, subscribe to our channel here, and be sure to let us know what you think in our comment section below here. Bye.